In this presentation, I would like to share with all of you my memories and my personal views on the evolution of weed research in Europe during the last 50 years. Although I will spend most of my time reviewing the past, I also would like to say a few words about the present and the future. So let's start by looking back. This year we are celebrating the 15th anniversary of our society, the golden anniversary. This is really an important landmark to celebrate. For 50 years, we have been trying to expand our knowledge on weeds and their management, and we are now in a mature and productive scientific society. The precursor of the European Weed Research Society was the European Weed Research Council, established in Oxford in 1960. This council was formed by individual members representing each European country. 15 years later, in December of 1975, during a symposium held in Paris, the European Weed Research Society came into existence. Behind the organization there are people, persons with names and faces. In this case, the key person was John Fryer. He was the original brain behind the creation of the society and his first president. John Fryer was also the director of the Weed Research Organization in Oxford. This center was widely known for its excellent program embracing both short-term solving problem research and long-term strategic and innovative research. In the late 70s, I had the opportunity to visit this institution. During my stay in Oxford, I met John Fryer and I was really impressed by this man. He had a clear view of the agricultural sector and his research needs. In a time when weed research was strongly focused on herbicide studies, he was convinced of the need to combine chemical technologies with agronomy, with agroecology, and with the underlying scientific disciplines. In spite of the fact that the Weed Research Organization was regarded as the world center of excellence in weed science, the British government decided to close it in 1984. This decision caused me consternation and dismay and continues to do so. I am convinced that this was a great loss for British and for European weed science. Continuing with my British memories, I can clearly remember the first time I attended to a weed research meeting. It was in Brighton in 1980, and I presented a paper on wild oat ecology. As you can see in this figure, I was in a minority group. 83% of all the works presented in that meeting were dealing with herbicide mode of action, herbicide efficacy, and application methods. These pictures have changed dramatically since that time. In the last EWRS symposium held in Lleida last July, there was a reasonable equilibrium between the number of papers on chemical control, non-chemical control, and weed biology, with a growing number of papers on site-specific weed management and on social, economic, and environmental aspects. A selected portion of all these studies have been published in Weed Research, our official journal. As you can see here, during the last 25 years, the impact factor of our journal has increased with various ups and downs. And many papers published in Weed Research have been seminal in their respective areas. Here you have a small sample taken from my own research interest, but I'm sure you could make a similar list using your own research topics. The observed changes in weed research reflect in some way how weed management had changed during this period. In 1975, weed control was largely dominated by the use of herbicides, although this use has been reduced significantly over the past decades. Agriculture in Europe still relies on using relatively large volumes of these products to maintain crop yields. Nowadays, herbicide resistance is a major problem. Integrated weed management is apparently the official mantra to solve this problem, but its use is not as widespread as it should. Various new concepts are emerging: aerial and ground weed scouting, using smart sprayers and small weeds driven by sensors, using robots. On the other hand, agroecological principles are increasingly being used for weed management. We have seen previously that herbicide use has been a major driver in all this history. Let's see now how the scenario has changed for the agrochemical industry. At the advent of this millennium, 20 to 25 major companies competed in this market. Companies as important as Hoechst, DuPont, Novartis, Monsanto, Aventis. Nowadays, many of these companies have merged and only 6 major companies remain. In fact, there are only 5, since Adama and Syngenta belong to Quintanilla. Now we are going to look forward, but before entering into the future, I would like to make a stop and review some of the trends and landmarks in the recent history of weed control. Traditionally, weed control was strongly based on mechanical and cultural practices. I will call this period Ag 1.0. The introduction of 2,4-D in 1944 represented an authentic revolution in this field. I will call Ag 2.0 to this period characterized by an intensive use of chemical technologies. In the early 90s, the availability of new physical technologies such as GPS, sensors, actuators, drones opened the door to precision agriculture and to Ag 3.0. In the field of weed science, we usually call it site-specific weed management. The advent of digital technologies in the early decades of this millennium, including artificial intelligence, may represent a new revolution in agriculture in general and in weed science in particular. As you can see, all these changes are based on the incorporation of new technologies. However, at the same time, other changes were taking place. In the early 60s, the introduction of the IPM concept represented a major step in making crop protection less dependent on the use of pesticides. In the early 70s, the late 70s, the publication of Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, created a widespread social concern regarding the use of pesticides in agriculture, and it has been considered as the origin of the environmental movement and the organic agriculture concept. Recently, in the European Union, the establishment of the Green Deal strategy has provided a clear support to many of these concepts. So we can say that this trend has a clear ecological orientation. Apparently, nowadays there are 2 diverging paradigms: agroecology and digital agriculture. Consequently, we are facing an important challenge, exploring how to join these two paradigms. Based on my own experience with working with both of them, I can tell you that ecology and technology are complementary, and they can and they should work together. In order to advance in this direction, I'm going to introduce the concept of precision agroecology. According to this concept, digital technologies can help researchers and farmers to understand and to manage the complexity of the ecological interactions present in agricultural fields. In the specific case of weed management, we can consider 6 major pillars. The first pillar is to learn how fields and the surrounding landscape work as an ecosystem. In order to do that, we have to combine principles, ecological principles, with farmers' observations, with field studies, and models. The second pillar is scouting the fields, from the ground and from the air, monitoring the populations of crops and weeds. The third pillar involves removing unwanted plants and keeping those that do not compete with the crops. This can be done using small sprayers, drones, air robots. The fourth pillar involves trying to establish a diverse crop plan, including both clean crops inside the crop area and beneficial plants in the field margins and in other areas surrounding the fields. Farming is a business, and all business economics have the last word. Consequently, it's imperative that all these systems are profitable. Last but not least, we have to take into account that within the agricultural sector there are different actors: farmers, consumers, researchers, environmentalists, input suppliers. The interests of these actors are likely to be different, so we have to work together and reach agreements. I will finish with a tribute to John Fryer, our first president. When Weed Research Organization was closed in 1985, these were his farewell words. I should like to end with a salute to those plants we have plucked magnet activities since the beginning of history, and which he has chosen to call weeds. Not only have they survived the onslaught of modern technology, but they have allowed me to have had a fascinating career, enriched with friendships made during his pursuit in many parts of the world. I fully agree with his words. We are celebrating now our first 50 years, so let's go now for the following 50. We are moving towards 100 years of weed science.